On the world map, it appears as nothing more than a thin line between two pieces of land. No bright colors, no large label, nothing remarkable from a distance. Yet hidden within that tiny line lies one of the greatest geographical powers modern civilization depends on. This is the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, it is only about 33 kilometers wide. Yet every day, nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply must pass through this narrow stretch of water to reach global markets. From space at night, Hormuz looks like a moving river of light. Those lights belong to hundreds of massive oil tankers carrying energy for the entire planet. A flow that is almost never stopped for decades. The world has many critical straits. Malacca, Suez, Bosphorus, and Dover are all strategic shipping routes. But nowhere else concentrates so much of the world's energy supply into such a small space as Hormuz. Around 20 million barrels of oil pass through Hormuz every single day. That enormous volume makes this small strait one of the most economically valuable geographic points on the planet.
Every morning, giant tankers quietly cross one of the busiest sea routes on Earth. Nothing in this calm landscape reveals its true importance. But in Hormuz, geography and economics intersect, creating enormous power from a narrow strip of water on the map.
The Persian Gulf is an inland sea located between the Arabian Peninsula and the Iranian Plateau. It stretches nearly 1,000 kilometers from northwest to southeast. At its southeastern end, the Gulf narrows into a natural bottleneck. That bottleneck is the Strait of Hormuz. The northern side of the strait is Iran, with steep mountainous coastlines descending toward the sea. To the south lie Oman and the UAE, where the Musandam Peninsula juts outward like a blade into the water. This unusual geography forms a natural funnel, making Hormuz one of the most strategic choke points on Earth. Hormuz is about 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. But not all of that space can be used for navigation. Supertankers must travel through two narrow shipping lanes, each only about 3 kilometers wide. The seabed beneath Hormuz is not completely flat. Deep channels and shallow ridges force large tankers to follow carefully defined routes. These natural formations effectively create mandatory shipping corridors. Hormuz is the only gateway connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. From there, oil travels into the Indian Ocean and onward to the rest of the world. That is how a small strait becomes the center of the global energy trade network. To visualize its scale, the width of Hormuz is roughly the distance between central London and Heathrow Airport. Within that narrow space, massive ships hundreds of meters long move continuously in both directions. Hormuz also features a unique hydrological pattern.
Denser water from the Gulf of Oman flows inward along the bottom, while warmer water from the Persian Gulf flows outward along the surface. These opposing currents influence navigation and require carefully planned shipping lanes.
From space, Hormuz appears like a blue ribbon tying the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. The color of the water changes noticeably between the two sides of the strait. These natural differences help navigators to find safe routes through one of the world's most critical choke points.
8 countries surround the Persian Gulf, all with coastlines connected to the waters leading toward Hormuz. Many of these economies depend heavily on exporting energy to the rest of the world. And they all understand that whoever controls the exit of the Gulf holds enormous influence over the region's economic future.
Iran controls the entire northern coastline of the Strait of Hormuz. The coast is long and rugged, with mountain ranges descending directly toward the sea. Iran also controls several strategic islands near the center of the strait. This geography provides Iran with a significant natural advantage in Hormuz.
Oman possesses a very unusual geographic feature. The Musandam Peninsula is separated from the rest of the country and surrounded by territory belonging to the UAE. Yet toward the sea, Musandam extends directly into the Strait of Hormuz, giving it significant strategic importance. The United Arab Emirates has a rare geographic advantage in the region. The country has coastlines on both sides of Hormuz. In addition to ports on the Persian Gulf, it also operates the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman, outside the strait.
Qatar is a small peninsula, but holds one of the largest natural gas reserves in the world. Much of that gas is liquefied and transported by LNG tankers. And to reach global markets, those ships must pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Each country along the Persian Gulf has a different geographic position. Some have long coastlines but are located deep inside the Gulf, while others sit closer to the entrance of the strait. This directly affects the distance and time required to ship oil to global markets.
The largest energy ports in the Gulf are all located inside the basin and must use the same exit. Whether departing from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, or the UAE, oil tankers ultimately converge at Hormuz before reaching the open ocean.
Beneath the floor of the Persian Gulf lies one of the greatest geological treasures on Earth. The region holds nearly half of the world's proven oil reserves, formed over hundreds of millions of years. All of that energy sits inside a closed gulf. And Hormuz is the only gateway connecting it to the open ocean. Every second, hundreds of barrels of oil move through Hormuz. Every minute, that number grows to tens of thousands. By the end of a single day, roughly 20 million barrels have passed through the strait. No other energy route on Earth carries such a massive volume of oil in such a short time.
Saudi Arabia contributes the largest share to this energy flow. It is followed by Iraq, the UAE, Kuwait, and Iran, each exporting millions of barrels per day through Hormuz. Nowhere else in the world concentrates oil exports at this scale.
Ras Tanura in Saudi Arabia is the largest oil export port in the world. Vast storage tanks and pipelines converge here before oil is loaded onto massive tankers. And from this port, every ship ultimately heads toward the same exit, the Strait of Hormuz.
The Middle East produces roughly 1/3 of the world's oil supply. But it accounts for an even larger share of global oil exports. Many other major producers consume much of their oil domestically. In contrast, Gulf countries export most of their production to international markets. From Hormuz, oil spreads across the world on journeys that can last days or even weeks at sea. A shipment may take more than 2 weeks to reach East Asia, or nearly a month to arrive in Europe. Every one of those journeys begins by passing through this narrow strait. Hormuz is the largest oil transit route in the world. Other major routes, like the Strait of Malacca or the Suez Canal, are vital to global trade. But none of them carry as much oil per day as Hormuz. In the 1960s, only a relatively small amount of oil passed through Hormuz each day. As the global economy expanded and energy demand grew, that flow increased steadily. From a few million barrels per day, it has risen to roughly 20 million today. Beneath the waters between Qatar and Iran lies one of the largest natural gas fields on Earth. Qatar calls its section the North Field, while Iran refers to its side as South Pars. In reality, it is one enormous geological structure stretching beneath the seabed. Ras Laffan in Qatar is the largest LNG export hub in the world. This industrial city was built almost entirely to liquefy natural gas and ship it to global markets. Every vessel leaving Ras Laffan must pass through the same route, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 1/5 of the world's LNG trade passes through Hormuz. LNG carriers, recognizable by their large spherical tanks, transport natural gas at extremely low temperatures. These ships carry the energy that heats homes and powers electricity grids across many nations.
From Qatar, LNG shipments travel to countries across the world. Cargoes may head toward Japan, South Korea, China, India, or Europe. But before reaching those destinations, every ship must first pass through Hormuz.
When oil and natural gas are combined, the total value of energy passing through Hormuz each day reaches billions of dollars. This massive economic flow makes the small strait one of the most strategically important locations in the global economy. Routes like the Suez Canal and the Panama Canal are essential to global trade. Yet Hormuz stands out in a different way. It carries fewer types of cargo, but the value of what passes through it, mainly oil and natural gas, is far greater. The ships passing through Hormuz are among the largest machines ever built by humans. A VLCC, or Very Large Crude Carrier, can be more than 330 meters long and carry over 2 million barrels of oil in a single voyage. The cargo of just one such vessel can fuel millions of vehicles.
Some oil tankers are even larger, known as ULCCs, or ultra-large crude carriers. These ships can exceed 450 meters in length, longer than many famous landmarks. Their immense size reflects the scale of global energy transportation. Around 100 ships pass through Hormuz each day in both directions. Many of them carry crude oil or LNG, while others transport goods and supplies to Gulf nations. This makes the strait one of the busiest maritime routes on the planet.
Standing on the deck of a tanker in Hormuz, sailors can see the coastlines on both sides of the strait. Ships traveling in opposite directions sometimes pass relatively close to one another. The narrow space requires extremely precise navigation. To manage this massive traffic flow, a maritime traffic separation system has been established. Ships entering and leaving the Gulf follow designated lanes, with a buffer zone in between. This structure reduces collision risks and keeps traffic moving smoothly. A maritime traffic control center in Oman continuously monitors ships passing through the strait. Radar screens track dozens of vessels at the same time. The system works much like air traffic control, but for ships weighing hundreds of thousands of tons. Saudi Arabia built a pipeline stretching more than 1,000 kilometers across the desert. The East-West pipeline allows oil to move from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea without passing through Hormuz. It is an important alternative route, but its capacity replaces only part of the oil that normally flows through the strait. The UAE developed its own pipeline linking Abu Dhabi to the port of Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman. Because Fujairah lies outside Hormuz, part of the country's oil can reach global markets without passing through the strait. Still, the pipeline cannot handle all of the UAE's exports. Even when all alternative pipelines are combined, their total capacity reaches only a few million barrels per day. By comparison, the flow through Hormuz is far greater. This means the majority of oil exports still depend on the strait.
If Hormuz were disrupted, tankers could reroute around the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa. But this path is significantly longer and greatly increases travel time. As a result, transportation costs rise sharply. Hundreds of supertankers operate around the world today. Yet if each voyage takes several weeks longer, overall shipping capacity drops dramatically. Building enough additional tankers to compensate would take years. For years, policymakers have discussed building new pipelines that bypass Hormuz entirely. But mountainous terrain and extremely high construction costs make such projects difficult to realize. After decades of studies and investments, the conclusion remains largely the same. No alternative route can fully replace Hormuz in terms of scale and economic efficiency. Geography itself created an energy choke point the world still depends on. Most of the oil passing through Hormuz flows eastward toward Asia's major economies. China, Japan, South Korea, and India are among the largest consumers. A smaller portion travels west toward Europe and other regions. Several Asian economies rely heavily on oil shipments from the Persian Gulf. Japan and South Korea import most of their oil through this route, while China and India also depend significantly on it. This makes Hormuz a critical factor in Asia's energy security.
A liter of gasoline in Asia often begins its journey at an oil well in the Middle East. After extraction, the crude oil is transported to a port and loaded onto a massive tanker. That ship must then pass through Hormuz before continuing towards refineries in distant countries.
For decades, global oil markets have reacted strongly to tensions around Hormuz. Even when oil flows are not physically disrupted, the mere possibility of disruption can cause significant price fluctuations. Hormuz is not only an energy route, it is also linked to the global financial system. Oil is largely traded in US dollars, and the revenues generated from these sales are often reinvested in international financial markets. Many Gulf countries have used oil revenues to build massive sovereign wealth funds. These funds invest in companies, infrastructure, and real estate across the world. A significant share of global investment capital today ultimately traces back to energy flowing through Hormuz.
As the world gradually shifts toward renewable energy, the role of Hormuz may evolve. In a slower transition scenario, oil flows through the strait remain high for decades. Even under a faster transition, Hormuz will continue to be a critical energy route for many years.
Gulf nations are preparing for a future beyond oil. They are investing in green hydrogen and new energy industries, using the abundant sunlight of the desert. And if hydrogen becomes the fuel of the future, the ships carrying it will likely still pass through Hormuz.
Fuels may change, shipping technology may evolve, but geography does not change. Hormuz will remain the natural gateway of the Persian Gulf for millions of years. Whatever energy resources are exported from this region will still pass through that narrow stretch of water. From space, Hormuz appears as nothing more than a tiny line on the surface of the Earth. But zoom closer, and you see ships, shipping lanes, and an energy flow that never truly stops. As the sun sets over Hormuz, massive ships glide quietly across the water. Nothing about the scene suggests this is one of the most important places in the global economy. Just water, two coastlines, and ships continuing their routine journey. Geography is destiny. Hormuz may be the clearest example of that idea. A strait only 33 kilometers wide, yet every day it connects billions of dollars of energy to the rest of the world. And the modern global economy still depends on that narrow stretch of water.